listening to Out of the Box with Rosie Tran. Out of the Box is sponsored by hugmetees.com. Spread love, give a hug, hugmetees.com. Guys, we are now on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/outoftheboxpodcast. I'm so excited about all the listens on SoundCloud, but guys, I need more followers. So if you listen to podcasts through SoundCloud, click on the follow button, and that helps us out so much. And as always, we're on iTunes and Stitcher Radio, and we love positive comments. Go on iTunes, Out of the Box Podcast, and leave a positive comment, and it really helps and supports the podcast. As you guys know, as always, clicking on the subscribe button makes us go higher on the iTunes list of recommended podcasts, so that helps us out as well. I am so excited today to have Bri Seeley. She is a feminist and fashion designer, and happy to be child-free as well. How are you doing today, Bri?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I first found out about you. I think I heard a story on NPR where you were talking about some of your struggles to become childless, which kind of sounds like the opposite of what usually women are struggling with having a child, right?
Right.
So what happened? You decided early on that you didn't want to have a kid.
Yeah, I've known for a really long time. It's just something, my mom and I have actually talked about it, and she remembers me being like a little girl in the back seat of the car driving around, and she would be talking to me, and I'd be like, I don't ever want to be a mommy. And, of course, okay. She just thought that it was like, a little girl thing or whatever, and typically women grow into that kind of thing. And the older I got, the more sure I became that was not something I wanted in my life. And so at the age of 23, I started asking my doctor. And every year during my annual exam, I would ask her if I could have surgery yet. And she would say, no, you're too young.
So is there a law that says that you can't become fixed, or it was just her personal opinion as a medical provider?
For the most part, and honestly, it wasn't even her opinion. She was going to have to refer me to another doctor to have the actual procedure. And she would say to me, she's like, well, I can refer you and I can get you the consultation. You're basically going to have to pay for them to say no to you, because it's very rare for a practitioner to do a permanent procedure on a woman because, you are young and a lot of women do change their mind.
Okay.
So, I could have taken the consultation with her saying I'm probably going to be told no. She kept telling me too, she's like, usually the age in which they'll even start discussing it with you is around 30.
That is very odd because, obviously I understand their reasoning, but I actually have a male friend who he grew up in a very abusive family, and he decided that he didn't want to have kids because he didn't like the way basically he felt that he wasn't raised with the tools to be a good father.
Right.
And so he felt that he had seen so many people kind of pass down negative traits to their family members. And he said, you know what, I can spend my time otherwise. And he was fixed. But yeah, he had the surgery when he was, sounds like a puppy, when he was about 26. And so did you feel that there was a bias against you because you're a woman?
Oh, absolutely. I know guys that have had the surgery at 21.
Okay.
So I absolutely feel like there's a bias. And part of me too, I've been asked should medical providers give it at an earlier age? Should they allow women to know what's best for them? And it's such a double-edged sword. I'm very clear in knowing what I want and very purposeful in my actions. And when I make a decision, there's usually a lot of thought that's gone into it. So it's hard to say that one woman, this was right for me, but it's not necessarily right for someone else, and someone else might change their mind. And it's such a personal situation that it's really hard to have a set rule about it. But a lot of doctors do have a very set rule about it. I have a girlfriend that's older than me. I think she's maybe 35, and she's been asking her doctor, and he absolutely will not do it.
That's crazy. I think it seems like it should be easier, and also, this sounds absolutely horrible. I'm sure people would be mortified, but it should be encouraged, because although you are a contributing member of society, there's so many people who I think don't have the capacity to be parents, yet they are, people who are accidentally pregnant, or people who are teen mothers and other things. And they just don't have either the financial resources or the emotional intelligence to be having children.
Right.
Yet that's acceptable in our society. And, educated women who don't want to have kids are being told no. It seems like a kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, it's such a personal thing, though, and it's hard to know. Yeah, I think a lot of doctors are afraid of
like lawsuits, right?
Legal repercussions. Yeah. That if a woman does change their mind, they'll come back and say, well, you didn't tell me about this, or you didn't warn me of that. And
you're the professional. You're supposed to tell me, right?
Yeah. And I mean, despite all the paperwork that you sign, I mean, I had to go through, like loads and loads of
legal paperwork
and, yeah,
the size of a Bible.
Basically, like sign away that I understood what I was getting myself into, and all the things that came with it, that it was permanent, that it was irreversible, like all these things. And despite that, we unfortunately live in a sue happy society, and that, despite all the paperwork that you sign, there's people that will still come back. And so, I mean, I understand their perspective. It was frustrating for me because I was like, I'm not that person.
You're like, I don't want kids.
Yeah.
How many times did you have to go back to your doctor? Have you had the procedure done?
Yeah, I had it done when I was 29.
Okay. And how many times did you have to go back? And it was just a year after year
every year. Yeah. It was like 6 years in a row that I would ask her every year. And so
did she finally at 29 be like, okay, you know yourself better than I do?
Not really, actually. I had my annual exam with her. I think it was like in June. And then it was like August when I called. I looked online. I did my research online. I knew what procedure I wanted to have done. I found the website of the procedure had like a list of doctors that did the procedure. So I found a doctor in the area that did it. And I'd actually been to see her before for a consultation for something else, like years and years and years ago. So I was already in their system. It was really easy. I just called and said, I want to have a consultation. They set me up with it. I think I was in the consultation. I think we maybe had like a 20-minute consultation. Mm-hmm. And then she set me up for a procedure like 6 weeks later.
Okay. Do you get a lot of pushback from people because of your decision? Like, oh, what's wrong with you? Why don't you want to be mother? Like, that's part of being a woman. What's wrong with you?
Oh, I get all sorts of, the Huffington Post blog that I originally published had all sorts of comments.
Did you have to block the comments?
No, I actually read them all. For me, honestly, I think it's a little funny because for me, it's people's opinions and they have their opinions. And it was really interesting to me because the blog was all about how other people were constantly putting their opinions on me.
And then people were constantly putting their opinions in the comments.
And then people were putting their opinions in the comments. And one of the ones I remember that I think is just funny was, you're going to die alone. And I just thought it was so interesting.
So are you, because we all die alone, actually.
Well, and it was so funny to me that I was like, wow, it's interesting how people think that in order to like be happy or successful or like live a fulfilled life when you die, you have to have children. Like that's their story and that's cool, but it's not my story. And I kind of wanted to comment back. I was so close to commenting back, but I had a few people that were like, put the computer down.
Girl, that's why I don't respond to any of the comments, because I was just going through this with a friend who got his first Twitter hater. And he called me and he goes, Rosie, what do I do? What do I, and I said, you block them, just block them. And he didn't listen to me. And he ended up texting me at midnight 2 nights ago and was like, what should I say? I'm like, stop, just stop. Because some of these people, what they're doing, actually exactly what they're doing is projecting their own belief system onto you. Right. And you don't fit into their belief system. So they feel it's very silly, but they feel attacked.
Right.
You're attacking their lifestyle by saying, I don't want children, because they have children.
Yeah. By speaking my truth, they're like offended.
They're offended because they're projecting their stuff onto you. And, I talk about this all the time on the podcast, and I've had so many psychologists and therapists and other people that say, this is projection, this is projection, this is projection. And I have people even agree with me, yet they can't see their own projections. And that's why we have these blind spots as humans. But it's absolutely crazy. And I've been so afraid. I have a guest coming on in a couple weeks that's a therapist, and he's an advocate for working on yourself before you have children. Yes. And so many people, it's such a touchy subject because people feel attacked if they have children, like they made the wrong mistake. And nobody is going to verbally out loud say, hey, I made a mistake by having kids. But I've had people pull me aside because my husband and I are very on the fence. We know we don't want to have biological children at this point. We may change our mind in the future, but right now our thinking is that there's just too many people in the world, and why not adopt someone who's already in need?
Absolutely.
So that's our personal opinion. But I mean, it's we even have been attacked for that. Like, well, what if they have defective genes, and don't you want your own kids? And it's kind of this narcissism that, first of all, how a lot of people think their genes, or they have to pass on their genes, or their genes are going to be the best. It's like, you're not that great. Like you are amazing. Like I am a believer that people have unlimited potential and that we all are amazing beings, but it's this crazy narcissism that also people don't see. And are you ever attacked for being selfish? Is that another? I hate that one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, So I grew up as an only child for 10 years. My sister was born when I was 10.
That's why you don't want kids.
Right. So, I tend to be, and I'm single. So like, I'm the one that I think of first, of course, because no one else is thinking of me first. So I think selfish is such a funny term. I do get called selfish a lot, but if you don't think of you first,
who will?
No one else is going to. And if you don't take care of you first, no one else is going to. So it's interesting to me to look back and wonder, like, when did selfish become a negative thing? When did taking care of your needs become something that was negative? I'm actually thinking about writing a Huffington Post blog on this.
You should. And I think there's a distinction here to be made, which I've mentioned many times, but some people still don't understand it. It's self-love versus selfishness.
Yes.
I think that selfishness has an element of destructiveness in it, where self-love is coming from a different intention. So maybe same actions, different intentions. So for example, if you're doing cocaine, that's very selfish because you're all about, I guess selfishness is more ego-based, where self-love is more about authenticity.
Yeah.
So there is a distinction. And I think a lot of people in our current society mix the two, and they're not. They're totally different.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, my ego is not involved at all about this whole child decision thing. Like it's just, someone asked me, I don't even remember what they asked. And I said, well, the decision to not have children is kind of the same decision that people make to have children. Like the steps, you decide what you want, you get really clear about that's what you want, and then you take the necessary actions to do, to reach that goal. I was like, yeah, my goal is not to have kids, so I did exactly what I needed to do to not have kids. While other people make a decision to have kids, they do exactly what they need to do to have kids. Like,
it's the selfish argument is sort of ridiculous because, first of all, so many people that I know, or even celebrities that don't have kids, Oprah is childless, and she's saying that she knew what her vision was, which was to create this positive sort of name brand.
Right.
And she couldn't have done it if she had kids, and she wouldn't have been a good mother. And so she's foregoing this one vision for another vision that's a greater vision that can help. How many children has she helped? She started a school in Africa for girls that has helped hundreds and hundreds of girls. So she was saying, hey, I'm going to forego this one personal vision to have a greater world vision. And how selfless is that?
Right. That's kind of, I feel a very similar way. I mean, my business and my movement and all those things, that's my focus. And that's where I put my time and my energy and my heart. And, my goal is for that to impact millions of women. I forget what number I wrote down for this specific year, but this year I have a very specific number of how many women's lives I want to touch and how many women's lives I want to impact.
Well, let's talk about that so people know what we're talking about.
Yes.
So you have this awesome women's empowerment project.
Yes. I started it at the end of May last year. So it's been like 7 or 8 months. It's called the Inspirational Woman Project. And my belief is that all women are inspirational. But I don't believe that all of us step into that enough.
Into our greatness, into our power. That's definitely true. A lot of women, including myself, have not stepped up when we should have, and we get to be empowered, right?
And I still do it all the time. Very, self-deprecating and like, oh, well, I'm not really that great. Like, as women, I feel like we aren't given the tools to step up and say, I am amazing. Here are the gifts I offer the world, and here's exactly what, I want to receive and give. And I want to change that. I want to change that mentality. I want to help women step into their power and really go out and rock the world. Because if I can impact, 100 women, and each of those 100 women impacts 100 more. Women, and it's like this whole ripple effect. And so it started off with a coffee table book. And then from there, it's turning into a movement. I'm going to start doing like workshops and seminars. And then I'm having a launch party in LA in March. Then we'll do like a 10-city tour. And then I'm also in the process of doing my volume 2 of my coffee table book. And yeah, who knows after that?
Yeah, there was some study done that says that a lot of women, we default to men. And I don't know if this is a social conditioning. I'm assuming it is. But they had these women politicians in certain districts, and they did market researches that certain districts wanted a female representative. And they were actually having a hard, they did like market researches that if a woman ran in this certain district, she would win like hands down. Yet they were having problems finding women to run in those certain districts. And actually the GOP was looking for women because obviously that has not been the party of women. So they're like, women, come, we're looking. We need women in the GOP, you know? So I'm not sure why that is. Has your interviews of women and the, involvement you had with your empowerment project shed any light on why women tend to default to men with certain things?
I don't necessarily know if it has. I think it's probably something that I've seen just with my personal experience is that women just for the past however many years have had to act like men in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah, and there's actually so much power in the feminine that I think I want to mention something that you talked about with women empowerment, because I actually was doing a lot of research about this because of 50 Shades of Grey. I know it's cheesy, but I wanted to know about the psychology behind dominance and submission. So I was like doing all the psychology research. I'm like, why is it? Because this is so cheesy, but I just went to go see the movie this weekend, and the character said something that I had never thought of. So I am like so into psychology, and I don't know why I didn't think about this. But so there's always the reason that we think is the reason, and then there's the deeper reason underneath. And in the film, he said something like, well, don't you want to not have any responsibility? Don't you want to have the freedom of being submissive or something? He says something like that. And so I thought about that. And then I was doing research on the psychology behind S&M, and they were saying that in a lot of situations, women actually have more power by being feminine, but they don't like realize that they have that power.
And I totally believe that, because for the past, hundreds of years, we've been taught to suppress that.
Yes, and there's been a fear of it in religion, with sexuality, absolutely. So many things like don't do that, don't be sexual,
even down to our dress.
Yes.
If you look back into the 70s and 80s, it was women dressing like men in order to be successful. The 80s power suit.
Yeah.
Is literally about putting a man's silhouette on a woman's body. The shoulder pads, the boxy shoulders, the straight waistlines, and I feel like we're moving into a place where femininity is like more women powerful, are realizing right? that femininity is more powerful, but I still feel like there's this struggle that it's uncomfortable still.
It is. And that you make a really great point, because the women were putting on the power suits and things like that because wearing a skirt, you weren't taken seriously, or you were seen. But I think a lot of it was wearing a skirt and being feminine and also being powerful is a threat to some men. If you're
Absolutely.
feminine in beauty, if you're masculine, I've heard a lot of guys who aren't threatened by quote unquote dykey women because they feel like you're on the same plane as them because you're masculine, but you're less than because you're not a man. Whereas if you're feminine and flirty and powerful and girly and you're powerful, like that's kind of scary. Like you have everything.
Yeah. It's funny. And it's happening in so many industries right now too. It's not specific to one area. It's happening all over where there's this threat of women really fully stepping into their power in a really feminine way.
There's a lot of that. I've seen that a lot online, and I've had a lot of feminist guests on that have been attacked because of that. And it's so funny. It's so funny. I just had a video game exec on female video game exec.
Oh my God. I just watched the SVU like 2 nights ago where it was like a gamer.
It was a gamer.
And
so she's being attacked by all these male gamers, and I had her on the show, and she said, people will search me out just to attack me and this and that because I'm in the gaming world and I'm a female. And so I posted on my Facebook fan page the podcast up. All I did was post the podcast episode. I didn't say anything. I said, oh my God, so excited to I think I had about 20 hater comments from men. And the irony of the whole situation is they were saying, we don't hate her because she's a woman, blah, 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 blah. Basically, all the comments that were posted were like proving her point, but they were saying that they weren't proving. It's kind of like your Huffington Post, where you're saying everyone keeps putting their opinions on me, and people are like, we're not putting our opinions on you. Here's our opinion. Right? It was like 20 posts saying, we don't hate you because you're a woman. You're a bad gamer, blah, 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 blah. And everything that they were posting was not only reinforcing her point, but these people were obviously not a fan of the podcast because of the type of content I post. So they were purposely searching her out just to put hater comments. I'm like, don't you guys realize you're totally proving her fucking point? Like with your comments? Like everything that you're saying is proving her point.
Yeah.
So it's just ridiculous. But it's this fear of, it's a subconscious fear. Obviously, these people are not going to admit, oh, I have issues with women or I have issues with power struggles.
Well, and I think it's something that's just kind of been ingrained a lot
a subconscious.
Yeah, through media, through television, through like all of these outlets. And I see that it's time for it to change, and I'm working actively to help that change.
This is like feminism part 2, right?
Kind of, yeah.
The 70s over again.
Yeah, but I try and approach feminism from a much like softer, like I'm not one of those like rally picket, like fighting feminists. I'm just like, here's my opinion and here's my thoughts on the matter, and hopefully it works for you. And if it doesn't, by all means, best of luck to you. So, but for me, a lot of it too is helping women dress like women, because
I saw that with your fashion. It's very feminine, very flirty.
Yeah. And I feel like it's really important for women to start doing that as well. To
being women and embracing that.
Yeah. So for me, like the movement started out of the fashion line because, a lot of women came to me and they're like, you're so talented and your stuff is amazing and it's beautiful and I want to buy it all, but I don't know how to wear it. See, women are still so uncomfortable with stepping into that. Like they might be feeling it on the inside and they might be aligning with it like mentally, but they're not able to make that shift of bringing it externally yet. And
I think there's a fear of being feminine. Have you seen that with your empowerment project at all?
I've seen it a lot through my fashion.
Through your fashion.
Yeah. And even, I had a client come to me and she loved this one skirt of mine, and it was lace and it was very modest. It came down to the knees. It was, not form fitting, and it was really classy. She said, well, I can't wear that to work. And I said, well, why? And she's like, because it has lace on it.
What?
And I was like, wait. She worked for some hotel chain, and she's like, the men would never allow me to wear it. Like, and I'm coming to find out that like all of these places have dress code policies where you're not allowed to wear feminine stuff.
Do you think a little of it was in her own perception, or do you think the actual policy was against it? Or do you think she just would feel to...
I think it was a little bit of both. And I think also she would have felt uncomfortable feeling like she was being judged by the men that she works with, which is unfortunate.
It is unfortunate, and it is very, very true. And, I'm a stand-up comedian, and I've seen it. It's so ridiculous. I remember when I first started doing stand-up, because I was really into fashion growing up. The big joke I say is that, I didn't know anything about stand-up before I started. I was like the girl that would go shopping and like, oh, fashion, and I would wear skirts and dress cute. And I remember, and here's the irony, Bri, which women, we need to start empowering each other, is sometimes I would get more haterish energy from other women. Like other women didn't like that their boyfriend or husband was laughing at me and I looked cute.
Right.
And so I don't know where that comes from, this sense of pettiness or competition. It's not in all women, because I don't like when people say, oh, women are catty. Not all women are catty.
Yes.
But there is still that sense of competition that for male attention, sort of. And I don't think that that's the answer.
No, I think a lot of it comes from we're kind of ingrained with this lack mentality as well, that like there's only so much attention or only so much of this or that or whatever, and when
it's scarcity, we need to hold on to what we have.
Yeah. So when someone sees someone else doing well, they're like, well, if that person's doing well, then
that means I can't do well.
Yeah. Or if my husband's laughing at them, it means that he can't laugh at me as well, or whatever. And it's this that's what I've seen create this competition. between women, whereas, you know, I'm much more of the mentality of like, well, I support you and you support me and we grow together.
That's very positive.
That's kind of how I'm trying to do this movement as well. I really want to create a community of women to help each other, to encourage each other, to empower each other, to share resources. And really realistically, I mean, if we all band together, you know, it's more likely for 100 of us to be more, you know, we're more powerful, we have more connections, we have more resources to rise together and do better things than for me to constantly be struggling on my own to make all the connections that all 100 women or access all the resources that all 100 women would have.
And women have a lot of power, which is something I get very upset when I see a lot of women, and I used to, you know, in my early 20s, I had this mentality too of being victimized by men. I know I have a girlfriend recently that, you know, had sexual relations with a guy, and she felt guilty and sad. She's like, well, we haven't been dating that long and I feel bad. He took this away from me. And then she was like, wait a minute, this is the victim, you know, mentality that's been brainwashing women, that a man can take this away from you and that you have to preserve your flower and all this bullshit. And she's like, no, she's like, I broke him off a piece of some awesomeness. I did him a favor, you know? And she looked at it as the opposite way. Like, hey, I did this guy a favor. He was desperate and lonely. He got to have a piece of me instead of he took this away from me. And so I think, like you said, shifting that mentality from scarcity to abundance, shifting that mentality from disempowerment to empowerment and community, it's, you know, we're all allies here.
Yeah. And it feels so good. I mean, it's definitely not something that happens overnight, you know. I try and be very transparent about the struggles that I face and like the blocks I have and the mountains I have to overcome. And it's still something that, like, even if you recognize something and kind of overcome it, it's still something that doesn't necessarily happen overnight. So like this weekend, I was really proud of myself because I actually spoke up for something, and I'm a pretty outspoken person. So for me to be excited about like standing up for myself was, you know, it's kind of funny, but I had someone ask for my time, and they asked to spend time with me, and it ended up that that he ended up being on the phone for like an hour and a half on the day that he has to spend time with me.
You're like, this isn't spending time together.
I know. And I, you know, usually I'm pretty easygoing and I had my own stuff to do. So I was working a little bit as well. But, you know, I finally had to say, you know, you asked for my time this weekend and I said yes. And I have, you know, 15 other things that are pulling at me right now. And to spend time with you is for me to neglect those things. And that's the choice I made. But you know, you're not spending time with me. And because of that, like, I'm actually going to go spend my time somewhere else. And I said, you know, I'm not judging you. I'm not, you know, no hurt feelings or whatever.
But I got shit to do.
I'm like, you have to know that if you're asking for my time, you need to be respectful of that. And it was very, like, I walked out, like, I was driving home and I was like, oh my God, that felt so good. I'm like, how often do we think something or feel something
and we don't follow through, right?
Don't say it, or we don't, you know, we just keep it internalized or whatever. And it felt so good just to be like, this is where I'm at and this is what I need. And if you can't meet it, then
gotta go. Laters.
Yeah. It felt so good. Even like 2 to 3 days later, I'm still like, man, I'm so proud of myself for like, you know.
That's awesome. Let's talk about the fashion industry, because the fashion industry, you're being so positive and awesome, and I love that. But it is notorious for being a bit cutthroat and a bit, you know, I think there was a quote from Asa Akira, who's like a famous porn star, that she worked in the fashion industry for a little bit, and she said she felt more demeaned than any porn scene she's ever done. And because the girls were so catty and it was so superficial, and she just felt, you know, this is a woman who's had, you know, multiple bukkake scenes and all this stuff. And she said that fashion made her feel like nothing. And I have heard that as well from some of my other friends that work in the industry, that it can be, you know, a bit the devil wears Prada. Have you had that experience, and how do you combat that?
So for me, it's a little bit different because I own my own brand. So I control my destiny, and I get to choose who I work with, and I get to choose who I say no to. So for me, I've taken a bit more of my personal power into the fashion industry as opposed to some other people. Like if you're interning for someone.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you ever work anyone or under anyone?
I didn't, because I was living in a really small community up in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And I started my brand up there because I was like, well, I don't really have an opportunity to work for someone else. So I'm just going to start my own thing. And it just kind of started as a hobby. And then all of a sudden I was like, all right, I'm going to do a collection and I'm going to apply for this fashion week. And like doors started opening and it just happened all really quickly without even me intending to take this path. But so for me, it's a little bit different. And I am authentic. And I'm really heartfelt. Like, those are my two things. And honestly, sometimes it bites me in the ass. But, honestly, they're the two things that I'm just not willing to give up. And there's a lot of that, unfortunately, missing from the fashion industry. And there are, unfortunately, those movies that then perpetuate well, if you want to be successful in fashion, this is how you have to do it. You have to
be cutthroat and, cold and whatever.
Honestly, from what I've seen, when I see that stuff happen, it's people that have the perception of, well, this is how I have to be in order to be successful. And so they come in with these preconceived ideas of how it works. And then they just continue carrying on those stereotypes and those stereotypes. So for me, when I have interns or, people working with me or whatever, I'm very clear in that I want it to be a mutually beneficial relationship. So if you're going to intern for me, you're doing a hell of a lot more than getting coffee and running errands.
You're part of the family.
Sure, exactly. Like, I sit down with my interns and I say, okay, you're going to be with me for 3 months, 4 months. What goals do you want to achieve by the end of that? What skills do you want to be able to put on your resume at the end of those 4 months? So let's start there with what your goals are. And then we work backwards. What tasks do you need to perform while you're here in order to meet those goals? What do you need to accomplish during these 4 months so that you can say it was a successful internship? What do you need to get in order to be employed afterwards? Like, where do you want to work? What skills do you want to have? And so I try and make it, much more beneficial for everyone involved. Yeah, they're helping me, but I want to make sure, and they're getting school credit as well, but I want to make sure that they're being helped as well. Things like going to get coffee and running errands and
doesn't really help anyone, right?
Yeah. Who's going to put that on their resume? Oh, I want to hire you because you ran and got coffee for someone for 4 months. Like, that's absolutely not a beneficial skill to have, but it happens. It unfortunately happens. And, I don't know if it's a lot of ego or a lot of power or what, but the fashion industry can be very cutthroat and it can be very demeaning. I try and run my business in a very different way, which is kind of makes sense, now that I have this empowerment project coming out and all these things. I mean, the way that I've built my business, and I've always known that I never wanted to be just another fashion brand. It's always been clear to me. I've never wanted to run my fashion brand the way that other fashion brands have run, and it's always been more about just the external. It's always about more than what you wear. I, too, am obsessed with psychology. Obsessed. I am actually a psych minor. I took all sorts of psychology classes in college and just love it. I am the person, you come to me with something and I'm like, okay, but why? Like,
that's how I am. That's what I'm telling you. I watched the movie this weekend and I'm like, but why? Why would someone do that? What is the reason?
Yeah. I was that obnoxious child that kept asking why. And I, at almost 32 years of age, still have not stopped. So like, I try really hard to it's not just the clothes. It's about what you're thinking, because as I'm a very moody person. So, I wake up in the morning and it's like, it's not what am I going to wear today? It's what am I in the mood to wear today? And for a lot of women, it does start mentally. What am I doing today? What mood do I want to be in? How am I going to feel? And then what do I put on my body to kind of mirror that? And so it's always been about more than the clothes. So if I can help impact women's minds, have them get up in the morning and be like, I am inspirational and here's why, and I'm going to kick ass today, and then dress for that. So it's not just about making a seasonal collection, following the trends, making money.
You're making clothes for real women.
Exactly.
Okay. That's really great. What are there any specific hurdles as an entrepreneur? I mean, you're starting your own business, which is,
oh my God, where do I start?
That are specific to being a female entrepreneur, or are the doors opening up more? Because, I know there's grants and other things that help women more, but then, there's also, like you said, sometimes people aren't taken as seriously when they're women in business.
The only, a lot of the things that I've faced are the the understandings that people have of like, you know, women in fashion. And because people look at me and they're like, oh, okay, you're a fashion designer. But then they look at my website and they're like, oh, but wait, you're like a fashion designer. Like, okay. Like, you know, and honestly,
like, that's what I said.
I've kind of stopped calling myself a fashion designer because, you know, I call myself an entrepreneur for all things women now. And coming at it from a standpoint of I'm an entrepreneur and here's all the great things I'm doing, as opposed to like, oh, I'm a fashion designer. You know, people think like, oh, great, you sit around and make pretty things all day, versus like you're hustling and busting ass to really like do good things. So that's been one shift that I've made. And yeah, a lot of like businessmen, you know, I've tried to get some funding and stuff like that. And through just being a fashion designer, a lot of businessmen like don't even want to look.
Really? Why?
I think a lot of it is the fashion industry is so fickle. And if you don't have orders and if
you have to show sales and profits and
I was in this weird like hamster wheel last year where I you know, wasn't making the sales that I wanted to make. So I wanted to get a sales rep because I didn't really have time to do it. But the sales rep didn't want to touch me because I didn't have sales. And the people buying the product didn't want to touch me because I didn't have a sales rep. And
it was like catch-22,
like,
right?
Which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. And so there, you know, there's a lot of struggles that I have just being a fashion designer. It's really, there's a lot of fashion designers out there nowadays. And to be real honest, a lot of them aren't very good, but it creates a lot of white noise. And so finding a way to get myself to stand out from all the other white noise and get buyers to want to actually engage with me and build relationships with me has been a really tough hurdle. And I'm still not over it. So that's something. I actually do have someone helping me out with sales for the new collection, which I'm very excited about.
So where do you get your inspiration? Is it just what you feel, or are you looking out there and comparing and contrasting yourself to other designers out there? Or are you just like, I don't want to see what's out there, I don't want to see the other collections?
Periodically I'll look at other collections just to kind of see, you know, what's happening. A lot of what I do is just based around the woman I'm designing for. You know, she's a busy woman, she's got a lot going on in her life, but she still wants to look nice and have functional clothes.
So do you have a character in your mind that you've made like Iggy or something? Or
I kind of do, actually. So I made a t-shirt. I guess it was about a year and a half ago. I drew like the Bri Seeley woman and put it on a t-shirt. And everyone that gets the t-shirt is like, I have your face on a t-shirt. And I'm like, I swear to God, it's not me. Seriously.
Like, it's just like, what I think would
it's
be
not
the person.
Me. Like, but you know, a lot of the traits that the Bri Seeley woman has are very similar to me. You know?
Obviously, I mean, yeah. You're drawing from your life experience.
Yeah. And I see so many women in a similar situation to me struggle finding things to wear, finding things that fit, finding things that are realistic. You know, if you're going to a networking party and you want to wear a dress or a skirt, why do none of them have pockets in them? You know, as an entrepreneur.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
If I'm going to a networking event, I'm not carrying a purse because my shoulder's going to go numb. I'm not going to carry a purse, or, you know, like a shoulder bag because my shoulder will go numb. I'm not going to carry a purse because then my hand's full, and honestly, in the other hand's going to be a glass of wine. So, you know, like when I go to a networking event or some sort of business event, I wear skirts that have pockets in them, because in one side you can put your keys and your cell phone, and the other side you can put your business cards, and you can have everything you need on you while keeping your hands free. And that, I think, is something that,
do you have a dress with a secret pocket?
I have almost all my dresses.
Oh, okay. Pockets. I was like, that's like my big problem when I go out to nightclubs or other events. It's like, I just want my ID and a credit card, and that's it, because I want to dance. And then you're holding your purse, and you have to put your purse down. You're scared someone's going to steal it, and then
yeah, no
pockets.
I know almost all my things have pockets in them, unless they're chiffon. Unfortunately, chiffon doesn't lend to
pockets, right?
But I try and make things very wearable for women, because, you know, and a lot of times too, I have a few attorney clients where they're at work all day and they need to be in the outfit, and then they need to go to a dinner or a thing at night, and they don't necessarily want to look like they just came from the office. But, you know, so making transitional garments as well, where like you could put a suit coat over a dress and make it look officey and businessy. And then when you go out for your drinks or your dinner at the end of the night,
you put a cardigan or something.
Exactly. Yeah. And it totally changes the look, the feel, but you don't have to run home. You don't have to take that time. So yeah. When I design, I don't usually follow trends. I try and, you know, femininity and just tactical things for women is really, and then things that I wear, or, you know, I'll try a design on for me, like I'll make myself a little prototype and then see what people's comments are, see how it wears, see how it fits, like what, where I need to make adjustments. And I made myself a New Year's Eve outfit and it worked and it was fine and I wore it, but it's not something I'd remake. So I'm doing a few little like minor adjustments here and there and it'll come out in the new collection.
So what were the things that made it unwearable?
I put this, it's called interfacing. I put the stiff interfacing in around the neckline, and the neckline was just too wide at the shoulders and came too deep. And because of the stiffness of it, it just didn't work.
You're like, ow, this hurts.
In fact, I even put it back on. I was going to wear it out Saturday night and I put it back on and I was like, ended up wearing something else. So it was cute, but just tactically, it just didn't work. So
I want to go back to the Empowerment Project because we kind of breezed over that and I wanted to spend more time on it. So you started with the coffee table book and you were interviewing 100 women, or?
It's actually technically 99 women.
Okay.
There is a 100th woman in the book, but the 100th interview in the book is actually blank. So
for whoever wants to step into their empowerment.
Yes, exactly.
That's great.
So whoever buys the book can put themselves in as an inspirational woman. And I think it's important for women to start seeing themselves in that light and then see themselves amidst 99 other women doing amazing things. Because once you start putting yourself in the place that you want to be energetically, like I believe it just comes quicker to you.
Where did you get the idea for this project?
Okay, so it was out of my fashion line. I had so many women saying like, we love your stuff, but we don't know how to wear it. And I was cutting fabric one day in May of last year and I was like, oh my gosh, women don't know how to be women. Like they don't know, they can't dress like women because they don't mentally like know what that is or what that means or what it feels like.
There's a lot of blurred lines these days with moms working and being a mom and being a woman and being a girlfriend and being, I hear that a lot from women who are working moms. They don't know how to shift roles because it's like they don't know how to be, like you said, feminine, because they're playing all these very masculine roles, or single moms. I hear that a lot from single moms where they're playing mom and dad.
Yeah.
And yet they're working. So there's all these masculine type energies, and then they have to be like dainty and cute or dainty and feminine. They're like, I don't know what I'm doing.
It's hard. I mean, for so long, I've had to, I've been single for 6 years now, and I owned a home for a period of time, and I lived alone and all this stuff. And it was something where like, I definitely had to be in that masculine energy, because if I wanted to get anything done, I just had to do it myself.
Yeah.
And you just get so used to being in that
role,
energy and being in that role that it's really, really interesting that when I'm dating, I have to try and like literally like make a shift to like step out of that entrepreneur, business owner, single woman kind of role to be in that more feminine, like soft. And it is difficult. It takes so much practice. And it's still a challenge. It fluctuates. It definitely is something that I have to be conscious of and really notice what energy I'm in. And yeah, it's interesting. But so I had that epiphany of like, wow, women are really don't know how to be women, and we don't really understand femininity, and like no wonder women aren't buying my stuff, because my stuff's all about stepping into that like feminine goddess energy. And so I was like, all right, well, my birthday's coming up. I'm going to start I was turning 31. I'm going to start this 31-day blog series in honor of my birthday. I'm going to get 30 women to contribute. I'll be the first one. And it's going to be 3 questions about what does being a woman mean to you? When do you feel most feminine? And what's your favorite thing about being a woman? So that was May 13th. So it was like a week and a half later, almost 2 weeks later, I'd gone to the California Women's Conference, heard all these amazing women talk, this great information, had all these epiphanies. And one of them in that conference was this little blog series you started, like it needs to be bigger. And then the next time my intuition would talk to me, it would be like, it needs to be a book. And it needs to be a movement, and it need like so. All
Jiminy Cricket
these
on your
things,
shoulder,
kind of. Well, then the next day, I'd been doing
Jenna Cricket.
Yeah,
she's a girl.
I'd been doing a day job for several years, and it was a day job I hated. I just wrote a Huffington Post blog about it.
Was it in the fashion industry, or no?
No, it wasn't.
You're like, it was a pay the bills job.
It was totally a pay the bills job, and I had been praying for years that it would go away. And I got my wish. The day after the California Women's Conference, I got up and I got an email that said, hey, we just want to let you know that since you're only working part-time, we're going to cut your pay in half.
You're like, woo!
No, I was like, oh my God. I was going to say a word that my mom doesn't like me to say right now. But
God put a challenge on your lap and said, this is your time to step up, Bri Seeley. You need to step up right now. That's what happened.
So I had heard Ariana Huffington speak at the conference, and I was like, she gives out her email at the end of her speeches. And so I was sitting there thumbing through my notes, and I was like, okay, this has to be a blessing in disguise. It has to be a blessing in disguise. I've been asking for this for so long. What's the silver lining? And I'm like flipping through my notes from the conference, and I come across her talk, and I'm reading over my notes, and at the very bottom I see her email, and part of me was like, email her. And then literally like the devil and the angel
on your shoulders, right?
On my shoulders,
the ego voice.
Yeah. And totally like, who do you think you are? She's never going to respond to you. You know, you're not important enough. You're not special enough. Like all these like negative self-talk stuff started coming up. But then the little angel was like, but what if she does? And so I was like, all right, well, it's going to take me 2 minutes to compose this, whatever. I'm just going to put it out there. And if she responds, great. And if she doesn't, I'm not going to take it personally. And so I wrote this whole big thing about how I'd gotten some bad news and I was seeing it as a blessing in disguise, and thanked her for her speech and the things she said and what I took away from it. And then said, and by the way, I started this little blog project and my intuition said to take it bigger. So I'm really going to be focusing on this and making it grow and blah, blah, blah. And she emailed me back 5 hours later and said, will you please start writing on the Huffington Post?
That's awesome.
So yeah. So that's kind of how it started. And then I was like, whoa.
If you build it, they will come.
I know. I'm like, all right, this must be a sign that like I'm opening the right door. I'm walking down the right path. And, since then the child free thing went viral. That was a blog that I did for them. I was on the Today Show. I just filmed a PBS special last week. I mean, like, so the more and more I step into the Inspirational Woman Project, the more doors are opening, the more things are expanding, the more opportunities are coming my way.
Well, we need more people. We need more. There's so much negativity in the world that we need more inspiring people. We need more positive people. We need more positive role models. So I think you're just taking action. I mean, that's the key with any dream, with any vision, is that most people just dream and they just sit and dream. But you took your little evil devil and you flinched him off your shoulder. Because that's anyone who wants to do anything, anyone who wants to write a screenplay or do anything, the hurdle is just actually doing it. And so you took a step and you actually did something. That's so important, because so many people, unfortunately, are bystanders, and they just stand by and they watch others do it, and they criticize and judge and put negative comments on people's Huffington Post articles.
Right. And honestly, too, like, I think it is a strength for me that I do take action. I think that there's a little bit of naivete in that strength.
That's awesome, because you're not going to listen to all the people with the negative realism, quote unquote. I'm using loose quotes here, people. Realism. Be realistic, Bri. No, the naivety actually pushes you forward.
Well, and I think that I always joke, I'm like, God, if I knew how much work it would be when I first started,
I would have done it.
I never would have done it. So I like jump into things. For the book, I did 99 interviews in 8 weeks.
Oh my gosh, that's intense.
As
a podcaster, that's intense.
Well, yeah. So I did my first interview July 7th. I launched my crowdfunding campaign like September 4th. It was successful like October 10th or something like that. And then I sent it off to the publishers, and I had books in my hand by January. So it was like 6 months where I just like nose to the grindstone, and Fashion Week was all thrown in there as well, which is a whole nother story. But it was a really intense 6 months. And then of course everyone's like, well, what's next? And I'm like, shit, I haven't thought that far ahead yet. Like I just jumped in and ran with it, and now it's done. And I'm like, oh God, now what?
No, I think that this is going to be a really, really big thing, because, everyone loves to be empowered. And I think more women need to be called into their power. So many women, especially women. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a feminist, because it seems like a lot of, maybe because it's part of the quote unquote status quo that men are where they are in their supposed position. But so many women don't know their power, like you said.
Of course, yeah.
And that is just so sad, even my husband, he goes, when I was little, I thought this as a kid, that women have so much power, but they don't realize it. And it's true, even, I had a friend that had dinner with one of those powerful men in Los Angeles. He owns half of the city. And he said this guy was scared of his wife. He said, I don't want her to find out I did this, and I don't want this and this and that. And it's so true. So many men, you think you see these powerful business execs, or, even President Obama has to answer to Michelle. So ladies, you have the power. We have the power of the world. And I'm starting to hear more stories, and it's so great to hear people empowering each other. And so how do you call forth people or women to step into their power?
I've started doing a few little, I've done a few things on YouTube. I just posted something. I posted a video on Facebook last week. It was a Friday, and I was driving into the studio, and I was like, what am I going to do today that that really is happy, that really makes my heart sing? And then I was like, oh, I should do a little video on that. So it was just a little, probably 30-second, what can you do right now? Stop everything you're doing right now, in this moment, in this minute, in this hour, in this day. What can you do to make your heart happy? And I just posted it, and I checked, I think within the first day, it had 500 views on Facebook.
That's awesome.
And then I can't look at the views on Instagram, unfortunately, but I put a portion of it on my personal Instagram and the Inspirational Woman Project Instagram. And so just kind of trying to get women to stop, get out of their own way for a minute, really tap into their intuition or their heart or whatever, and be okay, what do I need right now in this moment?
I think that is so important, because so many people, and not just women, guys, you guys do this too, ignore what their intuition is telling them, because we're taught in our society to be very logical. Think about it, think about it, think about it, think about what you're doing. And that's important, but also we're not just our brain, we're not just our head. We have all these complex systems in our body for a reason. And intuition is now proving to be so much more important, because sometimes your head actually tricks you, even though we're taught to be quote unquote logical. For example, somebody who's in the wrong situation, their mind will come up with 20,000 excuses and reasons and quote unquote logical reasons.
Right.
Like you said, but when your devil was telling you, no, who do you think you are, this and that. But that's not logical. Those are not real. Those are opinions that come up in your head, that you're not good enough. That who do you think you are, Bri, who to do this, and what if she doesn't respond? But yet those come from your head. Right. So intuition and your heart, I mean, it's been dismissed for years and years. And I think that's something about the feminine that's dismissed is, oh, women are too emotional. They're not logical. They're too emotional. Yet emotions are kind of like our inner compass.
Absolutely.
They tell us which way to go and what feels wrong and what feels right and stuff like that. So, even though we're taught to be more logical, quote unquote, that's more of a masculine, and the world is not all masculine. It's masculine and feminine. Right. There's a balance, and even men have feminine sides,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm starting to speak on intuition more, because I think it is something that we aren't taught to. I mean, it took me, for me, it's a muscle, I had to train it. I had to figure out, there's that, everyone feels it in different areas. I feel it right at the, my solar
gut,
plexus area. Yeah. Like at the bottom of my rib cage. And I can tell, if I sit really still and I ask myself questions. And of course, when I first started doing this, 5 years ago, I had to ask myself questions or say statements like, my name is Bri. And then feel what yes
if it felt true or false. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, or say things like, my eyes are blue, and then feel what no feels like. And really kind of training to feel out what is right for you and what's not right for you. And then you start diving into the deeper, oh, I have this opportunity if I take it, or, should I take it? And then feeling into the yes or no. And then, of course, the more you exercise that muscle, the easier your answers come, the more clear they come. I mean, now I rely less on feelings, and honestly, I get a voice that's yes. And I can tell if it's my devil voice or my angel voice, And so, because sometimes too, you'll say oh, well, should I go to this opportunity? And, my devil will pipe in and be like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, am I saying no because there's something there I need to learn that I'm resisting? Or am I saying no because it's something that literally just is a
bad idea, right? Yeah, because
so it's
your ego can trick you as well.
Oh yeah,
because it wants to avoid pain. Maybe there's a learning experience there that you're right. I don't want to learn that yet.
Yeah. So I've actually started speaking on this. I'm doing a webinar with Femfessionals at the beginning of March. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking with a pitch summit about it at the end of March. I've applied to speak at the California Women's Conference about it, and just all sorts of things, because I feel like it's something that we're not really taught.
It's not that we're not taught it. I think that we're taught to suppress it.
Yeah.
And we're taught to ignore it because of, there was a whole decade, which is at now where women were taught to, what was it called when they were just in the 70s when they were just giving housewives the Xanaxes and what is it, mommy's helper or whatever like that. Or there was a period where we were taught don't be over emotional. And I mean, other than the history of, the whole pre-1800s, but we're taught women are too emotional and emotions are bad and your gut is bad and your intuition is bad. But why is that there? It's built into us as an evolutionary tool.
Right.
And so many other creatures use it. If an animal is scared, it's usually because there's danger around.
Right.
So when your gut is telling you like, hey, this is good or this is bad, it's there for a reason. And we're taught, like you said, maybe not to listen to it as much as we should.
Right.
So that is very important. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up very soon. What are you working on? Where can people find you? What's going on with Bri? Where can people connect with you?
I'm all over social media. I am on Facebook /Bri.Seeley. That's BRI.SEELEY. My Twitter is @Bri Seeley. My Instagram is I am Bri Seeley. My website is briseeley.com. Trying to make it really easy for people. I have a launch party coming up in Los Angeles on March 5th. I'm anticipating about 300 people to be there. I'm going to have a panel of a bunch of the women in the book, do a little speaking segment.
Awesome.
So it should be pretty fun. We're going to ask them some juicy questions. Men are welcome as well.
And guys, you should go because who doesn't want a hot, sexy, feminine, empowered woman? So if you want to meet some pretty awesome ladies, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Plus, I mean, God, what guy doesn't want to be in a room full of 200 some women, right? So
if you're single, guys.
So that'll be fun. And I'm actually getting ready to launch my newest collection as well. So that'll be coming out in the next
And where can people buy
weeks.
your products?
Everything's available on my website at briseeley.com. So my fashions and the book and the t-shirt I was talking about with not my face on it.
Yeah. So also, guys, if you want to buy a nice, beautiful, feminine gift for your lady friend, I'm sure there's something on there that is appropriate.
Yes.
And as always, guys, of course, we will have all of her information linked on outoftheboxpodcast.com. So if you go on there, we'll have all her information. And I just want to know, are all of these women, did you purposely pick women for the project that were underrepresented to step into their power? What if someone is just a housewife or a teacher or something? Are they represented in the book? And can
Absolutely. Yes. I went out of my way to try and my goal was that any woman could pick up this book and identify with someone. So I have a Holocaust survivor, my 8th grade reading teacher, a few stay-at-home moms.
And all ethnicity, shapes, and sizes, of course.
Oh, yeah, okay. Absolutely. Age 21 to 87.
Awesome.
I have 2 drag queens in the book. I have a transgendered person in the book. I tried
every
to
type
cover,
of woman, literally.
I tried to cover every base. My grandmother's in the book. I mean, it's a whole gamut of women. Plus you, if you pick it up.
Yes, you can be the 100th woman.
Exactly.
That's awesome. And guys, as always, if you go on outoftheboxpodcast.com and click on the donate button, we always love donations. We are now accepting Litecoins and Bitcoins and all alternative currency in addition to cold hard cash. And as always, we're on Stitcher and iTunes. Don't forget to visit our sponsor, hugmetees.com. Spread love, give a hug, hugmetees.com. Guys, I am not exaggerating when I tell you that you will get a lot of hugs. I wear my Hug Me Tee out all the time, and I get hugs from all sorts of strangers and even homeless people, and it's great. I love them, and I spread love and brighten people's day by wearing my Hug Me Tee. So go on hugmetees.com and buy Hug Me Tee. Part of the proceeds go to help out charities. Guys, this has been Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran. Go on Stitcher.com and leave a positive comment. Go on iTunes.com, Out of the Box Podcast, and leave a positive comment and subscribe. It always makes me so happy. And as always, I love the positive emails. I've gotten a couple emails lately. You can email me at info@outoftheboxpodcast.com. But what I love even more than positive emails are positive comments on iTunes. This has been Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran.